My mom threw me out so she could start fresh with her new family. Years later, she showed up demanding money for my step-siblings' college, and when I said no, she tried to ruin my life. I'm a 28-year-old guy, and my relationship with my mom has always been messy. My dad died when I was really young, and from then on, it was just me and her. Or at least, that's what it should have been. But my mom was never really interested in the mom part. She was always more concerned with herself, treating me like some obligation that came with her single life, something she needed to keep up with until she could move on to something better. She wasn't exactly warm. She was distant and cold, barely putting any effort into being a parent. No affection, no real support. I was the kid who learned early on that if I needed something, I'd better figure it out on my own because mom had no time or patience for it. It was like she was annoyed that I existed, like I was something she had to take care of instead of someone she loved. When I was little, I didn't understand it, but as I grew up, it was impossible not to feel like I was just a burden to her. And she didn't hold back on making that clear. I remember coming home with a good grade once, trying to get some reaction out of her, hoping she'd be proud. All she did was shrug, saying, "You're supposed to do well. Why are you acting like you did something special?" There was no praise, no encouragement. Just this constant reminder that I wasn't worth any of her effort. It wasn't just her being cold, either. She controlled everything. Who I could hang out with, what I could do in my free time. All of it had to pass her approval, and that approval was rare. I remember countless times when she'd guilt-trip me out of plans with friends. If I'd try to spend the night at a friend's house, or even hang out for an extra hour after school, she'd throw a fit about how I didn't appreciate her or didn't care about spending time with family. She'd keep me home doing chores or just sitting around the house so she wouldn't feel alone. She made me feel like I owed her every second of my life. When I was around 14, my mom met Doug. He was an older guy, pretty well off, with 2 kids from a previous marriage. She fell for him fast, and he was exactly what she'd been waiting for. Her way out. They got married quick, and before I knew it, Doug and his kids were moving in. Suddenly, it was like I didn't even exist. My mom started talking about starting fresh and building a real family. Then one day, I came home to find my room half empty, with trash bags packed with my stuff by the door. She sat me down and, without an ounce of emotion, told me that since Doug's kids needed the space, I'd have to go. She didn't even try to soften it. I was stunned. I was still in high school, barely old enough to take care of myself. She told me she'd done enough for me and that now I needed to figure it out. Her new life didn't include me, and she made that crystal clear. Luckily, my best friend's family was there for me. They took me in without question, letting me stay with them until I finished high school. For the first time, I saw what a real family was like, supportive, loving, people who actually wanted me around. My mom. She didn't call, didn't show up for my graduation, didn't check in to see how I was doing. It was like I'd never been part of her life at all. I got through high school, then college, with a lot of hard work and help from my friend's family. I put myself through school, working 2 part-time jobs and taking on whatever extra shifts I could to cover expenses. I didn't want anything from her. I knew she'd written me off, and I was fine with that. I was building my life without her. Years passed, and I never looked back. I got a solid job in tech, worked my way up, and eventually settled into a stable career. My life was good. And honestly, I'd managed to forget about my mom and her new family entirely. Then, out of nowhere, a few months ago, she reached out. First, it was a Facebook friend request, which I ignored. Then came messages, short at first, then increasingly desperate. She kept asking to meet up, saying she needed to talk about something important. Eventually, I agreed, mostly out of curiosity. When I showed up, I almost didn't recognize her. She looked tired, older, and had this desperate look about her. We exchanged some awkward small talk, and then she finally got to the point. Doug had left her, apparently for someone younger. She said he'd taken everything, leaving her with almost nothing. I sat there, waiting to hear why she'd dragged me into this. Then she dropped the real reason. Her stepkids were heading to college, and she needed help paying for it. She figured, since I was doing well enough, I could chip in for the family. I couldn't believe it. This woman, who'd thrown me out without a second thought so she could start fresh with her new family, was sitting across from me asking me to bankroll her stepkids' education. I told her no, very directly. I said my money was mine, and I wasn't about to spend a cent on kids I didn't know or care about, especially after the way she'd treated me. Her face twisted, and she got angry fast. She started accusing me of being selfish, bitter, and holding a grudge. She went on, saying I was punishing her new family for things they had nothing to do with, that I was cruel and heartless for not helping out. I told her she could think whatever she wanted, but that I wasn't going to play along with her little fantasy of family support. I made it clear that she'd cut me out of her life years ago, and that I'd built my own life without her. I told her that she had no right to come back and demand anything from me now. She didn't take it well. She stormed off, shouting that I was heartless and that she'd raised me better than to turn my back on family. I left, thinking that was the end of it. But I was wrong. After that, I thought she'd finally leave me alone. I figured she'd go off and handle her mess somehow. But instead, she went off the rails. Within a week, my phone started blowing up with messages from random numbers. When I didn't answer, she left voicemails, each one angrier than the last, throwing every insult she could think of, alternating between guilt-tripping and accusing me of abandoning her. When that didn't work, she started posting on Facebook, tagging me in long, dramatic rants about how I'd betrayed my own mother and was letting my siblings suffer. She twisted everything to make herself look like the victim, like she'd been this amazing mother who sacrificed everything for me. And now, I was abandoning her and my family. It was infuriating, but I refused to respond. I just blocked her, hoping she'd eventually give up. Then came the fake profiles. When I blocked her main accounts, she started making new ones. Throwaway accounts posing as concerned family friends, random strangers, even fake distant relatives. All of them reached out to let me know how disappointed they were in me for not helping my poor mother. When I ignored those, she crossed a line I hadn't expected. She somehow found the contact info for my work. She started emailing my boss and a few colleagues, claiming I was abandoning her in her time of need, making it sound like I was some heartless kid refusing to take care of my poor, sick mother. She framed it as if I'd grown up with her giving me everything, and now I was cruelly refusing to give back. My boss called me into his office to let me know, not because he believed her, but to make sure I was aware of what was happening. He reassured me that he understood family drama and that I didn't need to worry about it affecting my job. But it was mortifying. Knowing my coworkers had gotten dragged into her scheme made me feel like she was creeping into every corner of my life, determined to tear down everything I'd built just because I refused to let her back in. She didn't stop there either. She went after my personal connections too, contacting my friends, even the family that took me in when she kicked me out. She told them I'd betrayed her, abandoned her, that I was this ungrateful, selfish son who owed her for everything she'd supposedly done for me. My friend's mom, who had been like a second mother to me, was furious. She called my mom directly, giving her a piece of her mind, telling her exactly what she thought of her for treating me the way she had. It didn't change anything, but it was good to know someone had my back. Then she tried a new angle. She went to my extended family, people I hadn't seen or heard from in years, and spun them this whole story about how she was terminally ill and that her last wish was for me to help with my step-siblings' college. Suddenly, I started getting messages from aunts, uncles, and even some cousins, all asking why I was being so harsh and if I could just look past the past. I was hit with guilt trips from people who had no clue what she'd put me through, people telling me, "You only have one mother, and family is all that matters." I was sick of it. So, I sent a long message to the family, breaking down exactly what had happened. I told them everything. How she'd thrown me out when I was still a teenager, how she'd started over with her new family and abandoned me completely, how she hadn't even shown up for my high school graduation. I told them that I'd built my own life from scratch without her, and that now, she had no right to demand anything from me. Some of them were shocked, saying they had no idea, and a few apologized. But not everyone was understanding. Some of them accused me of being bitter and unwilling to let go of the past. That only made her angrier. She must have heard from the family that I'd exposed her, because she went into full meltdown mode. She showed up at my cousin's engagement party, where she knew I'd be, ready to cause a scene. I'd barely walked through the door when I saw her standing there, and I knew she was about to pull something. I tried to avoid her, but she made a beeline for me, loud and ready for an audience. She launched into this rant about how I was a disappointment of a son, how I was selfish and ungrateful, loud enough for everyone to hear. She went on about how I was punishing her new family for things they had nothing to do with, how I was being heartless by not helping my brothers and sisters just because I held a grudge. At first, I just stood there, stunned by how far she was willing to go. But I'd had enough. I looked at her and said, "You threw me out so you could have a new family. You told me I wasn't part of your life anymore. So don't stand here and pretend that we're some happy family just because you need money now." The whole room went dead silent. She looked around like she was waiting for someone to jump in and defend her, but no one did. My cousin stepped in and told her she needed to leave, that this wasn't the time or place. She stormed out, but I could see the wheels turning in her head. She wasn't done. Not by a long shot. A week later, I got word that she was going around telling everyone I'd cursed her new marriage, that I'd been a bad omen who'd ruined her life. She spread stories about how I was cold-hearted and destined to live a lonely life because I couldn't forgive. I heard from mutual connections that she was going around to people in my social circle, trying to convince them I was some sort of villain. At that point, I realized I couldn't keep hoping she'd eventually back off. I had to take drastic steps. So I went fully no contact. I blocked her on every platform, changed my phone number, and let my boss and close friends know what was happening. I told them that if she reached out, they should ignore her. I was done with her drama and her lies, and I wasn't going to let her invade my life any longer. For the first time in my life, I felt like I could breathe. There were no guilt trips, no manipulation, no more worrying about what new angle she'd come up with to make me feel like I owed her. It felt like freedom.